If you buy or wholesale real estate, you're going to have to renegotiate at some point. In this episode, I'm going to tell you how to have a renegotiation conversation with a seller and do it in a way that gets your seller to say, oh, don't worry about it. It's okay. And stick with you throughout the entire renegotiation. And if you're not doing this the right way, you are absolutely losing deals. So let's not lose any more deals, okay? Let's dive right in. Welcome back to the show. My name is Ryan Rice. I buy and sell real estate for a living. Last year we did just under 1.2 million in gross revenue. I share this stuff with you with the hopes that it makes you more money. So I had a renegotiation conversation with a seller this week. And honestly, it doesn't happen very often. This was probably the first one I've had to have in a long time. And it made me think that it might be valuable to share with you how to have a renegotiation conversation the right way. This renegotiation conversation was successful. She agreed to a $25,000 price reduction, and I will explain what happened and tell you how I had the conversation. So the backdrop on this one, when we gathered information about her home, she told us the roof was 5 years old. She said that there were granite countertops, and when we checked out the property, the roof was 23 years old and needed to be replaced and actually had active roof leaks. The countertops were Formica, and there were a bunch of other issues that came up in the house. And by the way, I dread these conversations. I hate having them. They make me uncomfortable. I really enjoy when I commit to a seller on something, I follow through on that. And so I try to very rarely have these conversations, but had to have this one in with the size of this roof and just how much all of this stuff was going to cost. It was a pretty significant price reduction. And so here is how I have those conversations. I call the seller answers, and I say, hey, Miss Seller, is it a bad time for a quick conversation? And, if they're free, no, it's fine. And by the way, if there are multiple decision makers, like a spouse or some other influencer that's a part of this deal, then I will say, hey, is your husband available to talk now as well? That way you can have this difficult conversation with everybody and avoid the objection that, oh, well, I need to, take this back and talk about it with somebody. So you say, oh, Miss Seller, I have been dreading this call, but I know that I need to give you an update. I feel absolutely horrible. As you know, we had the team come by and they found some things, and that is the reason for my call. And Miss Seller, there is nothing more that I wanted to really make this work for you. And I'm kicking myself in the foot. We probably should have walked the property beforehand, but I really wanted to get this done for you, and I thought we could get it pushed through. And there was nothing more that I wanted to help you. But the team let me know after they did the inspection that they found issues with the roof. The roof is actually 23 years old, and it's going to need to be replaced. There were actually 2 active roof leaks. The ridge vent was actually improperly built, and it's metal, and the whole thing needs to be rebuilt. There's several pieces of plywood that need changed. And they also found some wood rot around a lot of the door trim and even below. We're going to have to replace the countertops because they were damaged Formica. And there were also holes in the siding that the roofer saw. And so we're going to need to address that as well. And I feel so terrible, Ms. Seller. I know you were wanting $250 and you wouldn't take a penny less. And then you just be silent. You just shut up and wait for the other person to talk. And a lot of times you're going to do this, and there's going to be a very long, uncomfortable silence. And that's okay. And if it makes you uncomfortable, then you just sit there in your discomfort until the seller says something. And something I want to call out that I want to make sure that you notice. Your tonality here is what is going to make or break this conversation. And I don't think you need to fake the tonality. If you're a human being, then hopefully maybe you do dread having this conversation and it makes you feel uncomfortable. But your tonality and how you're coming across and, the long pauses and the disappointment, you really need to make sure that your seller understands just how disappointed that you are. And what that's going to do is it's going to put yourself on the same side as the seller. And you know that you've done this well when the seller is responding, no, it's okay. You did your part. Don't worry. Where did the team come in? Like, what's the price or what needs to happen? And I think another important part of this is that you fall on the sword and you take blame for trying to get the seller a lot of money without, accounting for necessary repairs or without facilitating a walkthrough beforehand. If you take accountability for those things, in my experience, when you have these conversations, it just sits a little bit better. And then I also think, like I mentioned, just being silent after you say, and you wouldn't take a penny less, is just really, really important. And so let me tell you what actually happened. And it's actually kind of a funny story, and then I'll tie it all back. But this seller was silent for so long that she was like, "Ryan, are you still there?" And I said, "Yes, Miss Seller, I'm still here." And we ended up having an issue and got disconnected, but we got back on the phone. And what happened is she actually went into all of the things that I mentioned that need to be addressed or that we found that were unexpected. She just said, "Well, I guess I'm going to have to fix all those things. We're just going to have to fix them." And that caught me off guard a little bit because most of the time they're just, they'll go straight into, well, what's the, where do you need to buy it? And based on my knowledge of the seller situation, the whole reason that she was selling the house was because it's been a pain. It was a rental. She just doesn't want to deal with it. She's got a lot going on in her personal life. She doesn't have time. And so I said, "Well, Miss Seller, is that something that you really want to do right now?" And it's almost like she didn't know, she didn't think about the option that I could still buy the house, but just at a lower price. And so she then said, "Well, like, where would you need to buy it?" And I said, "Well, Miss Seller, this is where, I'm just really disappointed, but we'd have to buy it at $225. And we were at $250. And right away she said, "Ryan, I just want to be done with this thing. Let's just do it." And I used a tactic here just to confirm, because when a seller is agreeing to that type of price reduction, something I want to make sure is that we're not going to have any issues later on, right? And so I tested what it is that she said. And she said, "I just want to get it done. I'm just like, let's just do it." And I said, "Miss Seller, I can't help, and maybe I'm making this up here, but I can't help but think that, am I picking up that maybe you're just not 100% certain?" And she said, No. I am absolutely certain. I'm so tired of this thing. I just need to get rid of it." And by taking that, by staying a step behind the seller and by saying, "Yeah, I don't know if I'm picking up that you're 100% certain," and having her reconfirm, I think that helped make sure that there aren't going to be any later objections that came up. And so this went from potentially not being a deal and me being willing to walk away because it was just way too much. And if I bought the house, it's likely I would have either broke even or probably more likely lost money, to now it'll be a deal, right? And even if it's a base hit deal, it's another 20 to 25 grand that we should be able to make on the deal. And it's a pretty good house in a good neighborhood, and it'll be a quick turn. I should hold the property for maybe 3 months. On this topic, I would really encourage all of you out there, don't offer to your seller knowing that it's likely you're going to have to renegotiate later and then use this tactic. One, if you do that and you project out the next 10 years, you're just not going to be in business 10 years from now because people are going to find out that you're slimy. Two, I've just found that if you are genuine and you genuinely just want to help people, then it raises the probability that you'll actually close the deal and help them. So very short and sweet and super tactical. That is a renegotiation conversation that I had this week. That's how you have them. And they may not always work, but if you have the conversation like that, like we just went through, it significantly increases the probability that you can actually move forward with it. So if you guys got some value out of that and you feel that is useful, then it would mean a lot if you shared it on Instagram, send it to a friend. Maybe someone's in the middle of a deal right now and they told you about a recent conversation that they may have to renegotiate. Send this to them, see if it can help save their deal. But I hope you guys got value out of that. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.